something new that I'm doing on my channel, and that is book reviews. And one book that I've recently come across thanks to another YouTuber, I was watching her videos on just personal development in life. She recommended this book here. So if you would be interested in hearing just a brief synopsis and review and my thoughts and takes on this book, be sure to stay tuned. Mom and Me and Mom clocks in as one of Maya Angelou's best-selling books. She sold millions of copies of this book in a little over 197 pages. This book was published by Random House, a major publishing company, back in 2013. So that's fairly recent for artist and creative who actually just recently passed away. The fact that her career moved on so progressively and one of her latest works was still able to really sell very well just shows you the impact of her genius and the support that she had from millions of fans. So this is a personal biography. Maya Angelou steps into just a series of her life and she brings it to her audience, sharing some of the most in-depth and intimate experiences that she's had, both as a young woman in her career. She talks about her experiences as a single mother and raising her son by herself, early marriage, and I think the only marriage that she had, as well as her interesting relationship that she had with her birth mother. So Mrs. Maya Angelou was raised by her grandmother in Arkansas in a small town, Stamps. But in her early teenage years, in her preteen years, she moved back in with her mother, who she calls Lady, and her name is Vivian Baxter. But because their relationship is kind of heated at first because her mom unintentionally abandoned her at such a young age, the book is just beautiful in describing both Maya Angelou's plight and successes throughout her life, as well as the relationship that she cultivated with her mom throughout several decades after being raised by her grandmother. The setting takes place in multiple areas, from Maya Angelou's early upbringing in Stamps, Arkansas, with her grandmother alongside her brother Bailey, who is just hilarious. Honestly, he has a quick wit and sense of humor, and it takes her all the way to San Francisco, where she starts her young adult life and her career as a writer. And that's also where she meets someone and she ends up having her child. I think it was in her early 20s, so her son, by the name, her young son, Guy. But after San Francisco, we find Maya Angelou traveling through various parts of the country, byways, work, and showtime. And she goes on a tour as Lady at the Purple Onion and her famous show Calypso. Later on, she finds her way all the way to Paris, traveling through Paris, working in Europe on film. Maya Angelou's goal is clear here. People talking about how Maya Angelou didn't speak for several years when she was a young girl, and this story gives a closer look at the cause of that. What made her become mute and subsequently become one of the most reputable, well-known writers in our time, potentially, is all depicted here in this book. Basically, in the coming of age of Maya Angelou, and she sets out to share her story in the gritty. Nothing is really off touch here in the book, and I really loved how she was so open with her story, and you could see sense of humor in her book and her writing, and it's so well written that she was successful in making out her goal of writing this book. And I think that we're very lucky to have this book because she was elderly when she wrote this book, but I could tell her mind was still very sharp because she had to have been at least in her 80s. She was in her 80s when she wrote this book, but I could tell that her mind was still so sharp and bright and like brilliant with new ideas and plots and storylines, and just her writing is really just phenomenal in this piece of work. I really found several strengths of this book. Multiple times I just found myself feeling like I was in a room with Mrs. Angelou actually listening to her narrate the book. So I feel like this novel was very successful in her giving that intimate, raw account of her life. I also thought this book was really successful, like I said, the sense of humor from Bailey and her mom, Vivian Baxter. Some of the escapades that she's been on and supporting Maya Angelou during her one and only marriage that we know of. Just being a support there, just an unforgiving companion to Maya Angelou when she needed support. She needed someone to lean on to, maybe not so much because she was so fierce about her independence, but her mom was always there for her in every season of transition or change. You could see the character and personality and brilliance also of Vivian Baxter coming out on the pages as well. So the characterization of the people that was close to her was amazing. And even one story of Mrs. Vivian Baxter creating a humanitarian service in her city by the name of the Stockton Black Women of Humanity. You read a little story in there about how one of her clients wasn't so happy when she found out who she was. I mean, like this, right? So everything in this book is just so raw and true to character. And I really felt like those were strengths of this book, how it was ordered or authentically building up from those earlier years, from when she was sent off to live with her mother in Arkansas, and her brother was this young, developing youth ready to go out and explore and learn, and also ready to get back to San Francisco. And we just are taken every step of the way from those highlight moments in her life. What made her go silent? What made her go mute? To her first job working as a street conductor for the city of San Francisco at the tender age of 14. The relationship that she shared with close friends and other creatives who really loved her, all the way up to those struggles that she had as a single mother, and even a case of domestic violence that could have taken her out. But somehow her faith and her strength got her through all these experiences. Some of her first years in Showtime and on the stage singing with Calypso, as she took on this personality of this Cuban woman who could sing and dance and perform to this audience that was just like enamored by her, and raising her son Guy on her own. Her later days with her mom, as she unfortunately lost her life. But to see the buildup of not only her personal life events and her stories, but also the relationship that was cultivated with her and her mom was so inspiring. And I think the way that the book was written chronologically was key to, I think, the success of this. I would say the only weakness of this book is that it wasn't longer. Honestly, I know I'm a little bit biased, but I would say that one of the weaknesses of this book is that I would love to have seen just more about her first stepfather. We kind of stopped hearing about him. I'm assuming him and Vivian Baxter split, but there was really no more information like her relationship early on with him. And I just would have loved to have heard more about her life after publishing her first book. I think if she wrote more about that, like what was it like when she had published her first book, and what was it like going to the publishing house, and how long did it take her to write her manuscripts? It was kind of like that wasn't really the point of this book, and maybe it was just like short and sweet and ended where it could have been. But I would have loved to have read, if she would have went just maybe a chapter or more after the death and passing of her mother. I would have loved to have heard more about like those initial stages of her career in writing, because it talked about her career, you know, on stage and working even dead-end jobs before she even got there. I think, again, I know that might not have been the purpose of this particular piece, but I would have loved to have read on a little bit more about what was it like those first years as a published author, writing your books. How do you think your mom would have thought about you, power to the pen, and sharing your story to millions of readers, you know, because this was a biography. So yeah, I just would have liked to have read a little bit more about those initial stages and how she even got there. Was she scouted by someone? Publish her manuscript? How many times did she publish her manuscripts, and did they get rejected or not? Coached by anyone? And how the passing of her mom maybe impacted her as a creative and a writer, and what happened after her marriage and her son as he started getting older. What was life like? A little bit, just a little peek after the passing and how she adjusted. But I know really the main topic was focused on the relationship with her. I don't think that this book is just a biography. I think that this book is a tool of empowerment. It's a tool for us to look deeper into ourselves, to discover who we really are. And I feel like Maya Angelou was genius in that. She was unapologetically herself, and now I understand who that force was behind her, cheering her on every step of the way to be unapologetically herself. And that was her mom. Her mom, who was bold enough to be one of the first women to work on ship at the San Francisco port. And she was determined to get that role and sail around the San Francisco area in the seas as well, the larger seas at large. And she opened up the door for so many other women to occupy that role, even to this day. Her mom broke ceilings, being a humanitarian, opening up the door for so many other women who would follow after her. And she would always encourage Maya Angelou to keep on pushing and keep. This book helped me to understand myself. Actually, there were so many parts of this book that related to where I'm at in my life right now. And I will forever treasure this book because it spoke to a lot of what I'm going through right now. I recently graduated college about a year ago, and I've been very discouraged, I'm not gonna lie, because I don't really know what my calling or my purpose is. In between it, I've suffered, from some, I know you might see my travel vlogs and stuff like that, but I've struggled with some isolation, and sometimes I don't really know what my next step is. But this book, I kind of was able to reflect and see what is it that I could do to be unapologetically and boldly to just move on and pursue those purposes and those paths that were created for me, and not be afraid of what other people are thinking, because there was some ridicule there, but she kept on moving forward. And she knew she was confident and content with who she was, and she knew she was serving a bigger purpose. And her mom always said, I knew something more about you. I knew you were a strong woman. It enhanced my understanding of Maya Angelou as a creative, but it also invited me, and I think any other reader, to look deeper into themselves, to really see what's in there. What are your passions? What do you feel called and led to do? And I will probably reflect on this book several more times because of that. So once again, in this book, Maya Angelou sets out to just tell the tale of her life. I'm sure there were a lot of stories and a lot of details that were probably omitted from this book because she was such an interesting person. And I don't mean that in a pandering kind of way, but I mean, I'm sure literally she probably has stories for days. And she set out to share more authentically. She gave us a peek into her relationship with her mother, her step-parents, her grandmother, her brother, who I believe she was really close to as well, some friendships that she enjoyed in San Francisco. And I think she was successful in the goal that she set out. It's quick and easy read, fun to read, a lot of humor sprinkled in throughout, and very inspiring. I would give this book a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I really loved this book. It was a quick read. It took me about a week or two to read it, and I was just plugged into it. The only reason why it took me longer is because I had some other stuff going on. But every time I had some free time, I was glued to this book, reading 2, 3, 4, 5 chapters a day or a night. And I really love this book. Again, I now have this book in my collection. I've given this book to my mom because I would love for her to read it. I would recommend this book to anyone who's going through some struggles in their own life. Honestly, if you're struggling with your finances, if you're struggling with relationships, this would help you step out of that place, see somebody else's story, and see how that could propel you to a better area in your life. I would recommend this for anyone who just wants to know more about Maya Angelou, who's interested in her life and her journey, to give this book a chance. I'm actually blessed to say that I have a mom like Maya Angelou. And that's probably the most connecting part of this entire book while I was reading it, is that it just reminded me of my mom. Just her resilience and how she's always been there for me. It just really reminded me of my mom. Like, they have different personalities, similar to Vivian Baxter, Angelou's mom, who's always encouraged me to take another step, take a leap of faith, to not be defeated. Not only inspiring, not only informative, but very humbling as well, because I've never had an experience like that with a book before, where I took a step back and was like, wow, this reminds me of somebody I know, you know? So I love Maya Angelou. I want to read more of her books. I definitely just love her. I love her. I think she earned her stripes, you know, she earned her flowers while she was here, and her legacy is going to continue, obviously, just because of the sheer gift that she had, and the humility that she had, and the grace and elegance and humor, all these things that see it even in her writing. And like I said, I think my favorite part about the book was that she might have been in her 80s, but I wouldn't have known that. I thought she maybe would have written this book earlier on in her 20s or 30s, just because of how quick-witted and sharp she was. It's just really inspiring. Go ahead, check out this book for yourself. If you've read this book, go ahead and leave a comment down below on what your thoughts are and what's on your bookshelf. What do you plan on reading next? Be sure to also share that in the comments down below. Subscribe.